where are you now in terms of your number?
1/4, and
They'll get
continuing
there.
to move
They're
forward.
getting there. They know it's important to do that, and their economy is doing well. They'll get there quickly, I think.
Trump said it, and so does Joe Biden in his own way. The whole world knows that Canada doesn't really carry our fair share when it comes to the military issues of the world, certainly not NATO. So yeah, who knows what's really going on? Only trust admissions made by parties that embarrass themselves, but even be skeptical of those. They could be false flags or disinformation. That whole mercenary revolt, I still don't know what that is. So I was surprised when I saw this, though. In fact, I had to dig for a bit to prove it. I heard a rumor on TikTok, of all places, that Russia last year had overtaken mighty Germany to become the largest economy in Europe and now the 5th largest in the whole world. Come on. I mean, I honestly did not believe it at first. And if it were true, by the way, why hadn't I heard about it in the mainstream media? I mean, it sounds like big news. How could it be, though, given the sanctions against Russia and how close Russia was to toppling over and how this war was burning up all their money? It was close to imploding. That's what the news, that's sort of the narrative of the news. But I managed to find the source, and it is nothing less reputable than the World Bank. Take a look at the World Bank's 2021 rankings of countries by gross domestic product, measured using the purchasing power parity method. I'll use an example to explain what purchasing power parity means. Let's say someone earns $200,000 a year in Toronto or Vancouver, but someone else earns $175,000 a year in Red Deer, Alberta. Who's richer? Well, the obvious answer is the people in Toronto and Vancouver, right? They're making $200,000 a year, except that's just in nominal dollars. But taxes are lower in Alberta, and the cost of housing is much lower in Alberta. Cost of a lot of things is lower. So on a purchasing power parity basis, the person making $175,000 a year in Alberta is wealthier in terms of what they can buy. It's basically taking a basket of goods and services and comparing how affordable that same basket is in a bunch of different countries. It's sort of like that Big Mac test. Have you ever heard of that? How much does a Big Mac cost in each country? Sort of a measure of wealth and prices. Anyways, that's what gross domestic product purchasing power parity means, in case you were wondering. It's sort of a way of leveling different countries so you're comparing apples to apples. So here's what the World Bank says. This is from 2021, before Russia invaded Ukraine. It had a GDP of just under $4.8 trillion using the purchasing power parity method. It was right behind mighty Germany. Do you see that? Germany had a GDP of just over $4.8 trillion. As you can see, the top countries were China, the US, India, and Japan. Now, obviously, this is the whole country together. So that's more than 1 billion Chinese people together are wealthier than the 330 million US people. Interesting, India is about the same population as China, but it's only about as 1/3 as wealthy. Lots of interesting stats in there, don't you think? Very interesting. And remember, this is all based on their ability to buy a car, a meal, a house, adjusted to purchasing power. But still, let's compare apples with apples. So let's use the exact same study, the exact same chart by the exact same World Bank a year later. So we just looked at 2021. Here's 2022. China is still the wealthiest country in the world. America is still number 2. In fact, China increased its lead over America a little bit. India and Japan are next again, but look at that. Russia has overtaken Germany, not by a lot, but it's ahead now. How? How did that happen, given that the West, United States, UK, put sanctions on Russia, given that Russia is spending money on a brutal war? How did they get richer than Germany? And how did we not hear about this? Well, that last part is easy to answer, isn't it? I think the first part is sort of easy to answer, too, if you're allowed to think critically. Russia has valuable things: oil, natural gas, minerals, wheat. Lots of things that people around the world need no matter what. China and India will import oil and gas and food from anyone. They don't care about social license or carbon taxes. I mean, the liberals in Canada lied to us saying no one will buy our oil and gas if we don't impose environmental policies like carbon taxes. We need social license. That's nonsense. OPEC and Russia dominate world energy markets, and they couldn't be more abusive to both the environment and the people, too. No one cares. North America buys oil from Saudi Arabia and Iran. We used to buy from Iran. China still buys from Iran. So, yeah, Russia has things that people want and will pay for, things that we in Canada could produce, but we're deliberately sabotaging. We are shutting down oil and gas and fracking. And they're going to shut down farming next. Imagine doing that while Russia is producing and selling what people need and want. We're cracking down on oilmen and farmers. I think this would come as shocking news, Russia's increase in its economy, to most people who are convinced that Russia is teetering on the edge of a collapse and it's going to rise up and depose Putin at any moment now. I don't think so. In fact, I think the economy in the West is worse. Yes, we're richer than Russia per capita, sure, but they're growing their economy and they just leaped ahead of Germany's industrial might. And that's in part because Germany is so obsessed with foolishly expensive alternative energy. Don't kid yourselves. But this is contrary to Trudeau's narrative, isn't it?